Welcome to this week's episode of the Rutledge Perspective podcast. This is the inaugural session of the Women's History Month series, where I am going to be talking to some of the amazing women that are in my village. And so this first one for the very first week is called Shared Beginnings, because these are women that we have known each other literally since we were born. Since our mothers were pregnant, we have known each other and grew up in the same place, had some of the same experiences. And I think often we find as women that we'll make relationships and have people we learn later and get to know later. But I've run into very, very few people who have friends that they have known as long as I have known these women. And so I wanted to come to you guys and bring them to you so that we could talk about what that means in shared beginnings and how that was a great foundation for all of us in little old Odessa, Texas. So I'm going to introduce you really quickly, and then we are going to dive in. So we have Renee Whitaker. Say, hey, Renee.
Hey.
And then we have Jennifer Williams, Mays. And then we have Tisa Hawkins. And then we have Natalyn Daniels.
Hey.
And I should say Renee Whitaker Terrell. So I have that right. So, because you grow up and you're like, okay, I know it is Jan and Renee and Nat and Tisa. So you're going to get to meet these amazing women, and you'll be able to see their bios in the show notes. So where I want to start is, again, all of us grew up in Odessa, Texas, way West Texas, Permian Basin, like 1% Black people. And yet we were able to build these relationships because our parents built these relationships. And so we just kind of came along and then we're able to connect. So I want to start, Renee, kind of start with you and just say, as you were growing up in Odessa and started, developing these friendships, what is the thing that stands out most to you with the people that you met and that you still know that you grew up with?
Well, the thing that stood out for me is going to school and meeting different people. Of course, for the four of you, I met you through parents.
Yes.
Because we didn't go to the same schools.
Mm-hmm.
But Tisa lived close. So, I would see her whenever, any other day that I wanted to. But what stood out was just meeting friends and getting to build relationships with some friends who I did keep along from elementary on through high school.
Mm-hmm. And I think that may be a function of small town too, right? Because Odessa wasn't that big.
Wasn't that big.
Yeah.
And you had your pick of your friends too. Although we had more people that we could have been friends with, you just had your little clique.
Exactly. What about you, Jan?
I'm probably going to echo what Renee said, just the friendships, relationships, and just, seeing the four of you, kind of correlates to all that and brings it all home. So I would say the same.
Yeah. What about you, Natalyn?
I'd say pretty much the same thing, but the fact that the four of you were really the only people we were allowed to be friends with on the basis of spending the night.
That's a good thing to say.
We knew my parents knew your parents.
Yes.
Allowed.
Yes.
And it was always a beautiful thing though, because I would be so excited to spend time with you ladies, because you were, like I said, the ones we were allowed to spend time with. So
yes, that is so true. That's so true. What about you, Tisa?
Yeah, you all have really, captured it very well, but that's exactly right. I just think it's so beautiful that we're so different, but yet we're so much alike, because we just have this bond from being together and coming up in West Texas, and just the thought of being able to be together as long as we have. But it's just something inside of each of us that just draws us together. It's just almost like a magnet of some sorts.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to Natalyn's point, that whole idea of, we were only allowed to deal with certain people, right? Like you could know a lot of people, but you weren't necessarily allowed to hang out with everybody. And it wasn't an idea of snobbery or any of that kind of stuff. It was about kind of safety and shared values and all of that. So maybe talk a little bit, since you reminded us of that, Natalyn, maybe talk a little bit about that kind of how it seemed to be us, and our parents sending us the message that this was okay. These were okay.
Well, just like you said, with the shared values, I think that's the big point of it, because all of our parents were all professionals. They were all with values and mentality, and they brought all of the children up with the same type of thing. So it was just to keep us all grounded, so that we would all, follow suit behind the way that they behaved. So, like you said, there were plenty of people that we associate with, befriended, but to actually be bonded with. Is because of that base that our parents had, their strengths that they instilled in all of us. So that's even to this day.
Exactly. And those shared memories, right? Because while we lived in different places, although Renee, you started out and we were all kind of in that same area, and that was away from us, but we were all up in the same area. And then you moved more west, right? And so closer to Jan. So it was kind of weird. Like, the town is small, but you still had kind of these areas that you moved into. And so how for you, Renee, when you think about being there first, right, just off Dixie on the south side, and then moving over there closer to Ector, how was that kind of transition, and what did that mean for you?
Well, for me, I didn't want to leave because, I was right there on Pecos, and I was with you and Tisa. And like Natalyn said, we were allowed to go to certain people's homes, but I could walk over to Tisa's anytime. But my parents knew I was going there and I was safe. But also where Tisa was, there was Cheryl Blaylock. Trinity Davis. I could go over to their house, but it was like an hour and you get back home. You couldn't just hang out, because they were a little different. And mom and daddy didn't know Trinity Davis. I don't even know if Trinity Davis had a mom and a dad, but they didn't know them personally, or Cheryl Blaylock's. Well, later on, mom and dad got to know Cheryl Blaylock's mom and dad, but they just didn't know them as close as you all's parents. They knew that I could go. But after leaving and going over to Oak Street, then I knew Jan was around the corner. So, I could visit Jan. But Natalyn, mom would have to take me over there. On the other side of town. But, just being able to walk and do what you wanted, I enjoyed that. Able to go over there and knock on the door. Sometimes I didn't even knock at Tisa's. I would just go. My mother would probably turn around. Oh, you in the house?
And I remember that little kitchen table, that little round table in the kitchen. I remember that. I remember that over there on Pecos. And then Jan, I remember too, a lot of times I would see you because you'd be at your grandmother's, which is like right around the corner. So how was that for you? Because that was kind of two places you had to be, because with your grandparents right there in town, that made a difference too.
So I actually, of course, love being on that side of town because all my cousins were there as well. So, I had cousins on this side of my grandmother's house and cousins on this side of my grandmother's house. And then the other cousins, I had one cousin that lived over there on the west, Melissa, by us, but they were typically all over to their grandmother's house. And that particular aunt has a lot of children. So it was like family reunion every day when I was over there. I remember mom said, even when I was little, I would cry when she would pick me up sometimes when it was time to go home, because I just love being over there. But I wanted to piggyback off of something I think Natalyn said, and maybe Renee as well, on the allowed part. I think part of that, like you said, it wasn't a snobbish thing. It was definitely the shared values. But it was also the fact that our parents trusted the other parents. There was that trust factor that you're going to treat my child the way that you treat your child. And that includes the discipline part. It was definitely the whole village thing. So it was that, okay, don't go over there, because if we have to get you, when I get back home, I'm going to get you. You know what I'm saying? So I love the fact, and would love to see more of that now, to where you're not allowing your child to be anywhere. Really, sometimes even not knowing where your child is, but that you have them in an environment with people that are going to take care of them and raise them and treat them the way that the way that you would, or whatever. So,
And there's something about that village, right? I mean, there's a reason why I use village and not tribe, right? There's really something about that village. And, Tisa, I think for you and me, so I had Jay, so I had a brother, but I didn't have sisters, right? And none of our family was in Odessa. And then Tisa, you were an only child. So it was kind of like Tisa ended up being my sister, and then y'all ended up being my sisters, right? So how for you, Tisa, if you think about that, because you had a lot of cousins and stuff, though, that were in town. So how was it for you when you thought about kind of moving and going to the different places?
Well, it was, my friends were my sisters and, and brothers, you could say. And that's why I valued what we had, because it felt like a sisterhood. I felt like you all, were my sisters, and you could come over anytime, and, we would have a good time together. And I didn't want to disappoint your parents. So I wanted to make sure that I was doing what I was supposed to do when I was, when I was at your homes, and abiding by the rules and all. And having cousins in town was very nice. It was a sense of, a sense of family, because my cousins were like brothers and sisters, because since I am, an only child. So that's exactly what that was like for me. It was a sense of, my friends were like family, but then I also had family that was there. So it's just like I had, the best of both worlds. And it was, it was, I enjoyed my childhood.
Yes. I did too. And it's funny because y'all's families became my families, right? So your cousins, Jan, your cousins, Tisa. And so when we did, the reunions, the calls that we did this last year, and I got to see Melanie again, right? And then when we were at your wedding, Jan, and I got to see Janann and got to see it was like my family too, because that's how we grew up. We just knew these people. And it was just a very gray line. Like you knew that was Tisa's cousin or Jan's cousin, right? But they were all family because we all just knew each other and we all kind of grew up together. So, what for you, Tisa, kind of piggybacking on that with all the cousins and how we grew up, what are some of the memories as we talked about going to each other's houses? What are some of the things that come up for you?
Oh my goodness. I think about we used to be able to walk and get the penny candy.
Yes.
I ran across a picture not too long ago of Renee, I think it was Nikki Whiteside, making snow cones in the kitchen.
Yes.
It was one of the times she came over and, we were making snow cones, and I'd love it when Daddy would need to go over there and talk to Mr. Whitaker about something. I need to go over to Wits.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna take my alternator, whatever it was.
Right.
That's great, because then I get to go see Renee,
Yes. Yes.
And it was kind of like that with, with everybody had something to offer. And so it was like, oh, we get to go, spend some time over at Jan's or Natalyn's or, at Laurel's. And it was just wonderful. I love being able to go to y'all's houses, and it was really a good time. And it was, Ector High School is a very, very good man.
Yes.
With Mr. Whitaker working there, my father working there, and then a lot of the students that went to school there came up from Black Ector.
Yes.
Just the bond that our students had with our parents. It was that's a nice memory too. Lots.
Absolutely.
Memories.
Absolutely. And Nat, what about you?
Well, just like Tisa was saying about going to Renee's, my dad, it was always a mechanic issue here, or to go get a haircut,
right.
you gonna see Jen. Your dad being the educator was always somewhere in there. And then your mom and my mom both being nurses, stuff had that bond. So it's like anytime we got to spend time together. First of all, I did have an older sister.
Yes.
But she didn't want to be bothered with me.
I guess that's how Janann feels.
Right? Right. Yes. I was always excited
Yeah.
when I could spend time with any or all of
Mhm.
you, because I was like, well, somebody wants to be
Right?
bothered with me, and we would, we would do little goofy
Yeah.
things, we were little girls still.
Yes.
We did little girl things. We weren't being fast. We
Mhm.
were playing dolls and playing
Yeah.
games and, laughing and talking and trying to cook or
Right?
whatever we thought we were
Yes.
doing. So we were doing little girl
Yes.
things. And I think that
Yes.
was just the most beautiful thing
Yeah.
that we all did. All of us were doing that.
That's so true. Cause I just think that's missing, right? Like kids being kids
Yes.
anymore. And that whole idea of, you'd have to go visiting. I used to get so irritated because mom would have a weekend where she didn't want to be bothered. So then we have to hang out with daddy. And it was like, we're going to go riding. Well, that meant you were going to go to Dr. Stewart's house and sit for 4 hours, or you were going to go to some, but if we were going right to see Wit, I was good because I had something to do, right? My poor brother,
Yeah.
he was in trouble, right? Or if we were going to get a haircut, if we, then I knew it was going to be okay. I wasn't going to be sitting there. Although that's probably why now I really like listening to a lot of old people, right? Because you learn so much wisdom. But man, it was tough. Jen, what about, if you think about those times too, when we were getting together and trying to figure out, are we going to spend the night? What are we going to do? What for you, when Nat talks about being kind of just girls, just little girls, what stands out for you as kind of those memories of just that time together?
I remember the birthday parties, all the different birthday parties. Yes. I remember my mom, I would usually have like a little themed birthday party. Mm-hmm. I remember one in particular. Y'all remember the hobo party I had? And Tisa came dressed like, we were all dressed like hobos, but Tisa had blacked out one of her.
Yes!
Oh my gosh, that is so funny.
Front tooth to make it look like she didn't have a tooth.
Yes.
I remember I got a picture. I think it was my party, Renee. I'm almost sure. Was in the backyard and Renee had on a cute little dress with her little white go-go boots on.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just so the birthday party.
Not those little boots.
Birthday parties.
Yes, I remember that. And the cake, I remember because we'd get store-bought cake.
Yes. And I love to this day, I love birthday cake and wedding cake. Like buttercream. Yes. Don't bring me Cool Whip. I don't want Cool Whip.
Right.
You want the real thing.
Yes, sherbet and ginger ale. Those are my staples. And
I have to ask when I go and buy the cakes at the store, is this real sugar icing?
Yes.
Whipped cream.
Yes.
Yes.
I want my sherbet and ginger ale to go with
yes, that's what sherbet and ginger ale.
Yes.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yes.
Well, Renee, for you, I remember, when every time we go to Renee's house, she was either sewing something, making some kind of clothes, or she was cooking French fries. Yep. So I was in my happy place because I was either learning, to sew something, because my mother got me that little bitty sewing machine at the beginning too. And Renee always made her clothes. And I thought that is so cool because she had stuff that nobody else had. Right. Mm-hmm. So because she was making it. Yep. And then I remember, making the French fries. I'm like, well, I can cook French fries at home too. And I remember my mom would get so mad because Renee always put the hot sauce in her grease. And the first time I did that, my mother was like, have you lost your mind? I'm like, well, this is the way Renee did it.
Because you can't reuse that grease.
Yes. So what for you, when you think about, the times that we would come over and those memories, what stands out for you?
Just sitting and talking with y'all when I could.
Yeah.
Just sitting there talking about not old times, but the times that were going on at school.
Yes.
And stuff. And just, like I said, just being able to walk to and from your house. Well, I had to be walked across the street for you, Laura.
Right. Yes.
I couldn't run across the street by myself, but just being able to sit with y'all and talk and hang out at the house.
Yeah.
Well, and I think birthday parties. Now I love going to each of y'all's birthday parties. Birthday parties were just a fun thing. We got to see other people too that we enjoyed to be with.
Right. Well, and I think people don't understand, for us. So there was, when you talk about who you were allowed to and whether or not you could walk across the street, it was a process. Like you couldn't just walk across the street. Like somebody had to walk you to the end of your street, that parent. They watched you cross the street and the other parent was on the other side. Well, it was a whole process, right? Mm-hmm. And Halloween wasn't Halloween. You didn't trick or treat. You got in the car, you were driven to somebody's house,
Right.
Then the parents had their little thing, so you had to hang out a while. And then you got to go to the other, right? It was just a whole different kind of village around safety, around knowing who you were with, about how you were being treated. I mean, it was just a bigger deal. So how, if you guys think then about all those years that we spent, and then we've all gone to different places, right? We're in different places, we've done different things. How did that kind of translate or even ground you for what you do now and how you think now? Jan, I'll start with you.
Well, one thing I have to work on, which this is a negative, is not judging because of how our parents did things and how we did things. Sometimes I do think I have a spirit, a judgmental spirit when I'm watching this younger generation parent, and I'm just kind of like, what the, really? Right? Oh, that's how she's gonna come to school? That's what she's, you know. So I'm working on that because I know it's just different, you know. But as far as everything else, let me. I think this is important to share this. When I was on the staff at the church, we did a kind of like a family background dive in. We had to do a presentation and just kind of show our journey in pictures. And in that moment, I realized that my work ethic, which more and more I'm becoming more and more proud of, was due to our parents and our grandparents and the work ethic they have. And I realized not everybody has that same work ethic, you know? So I think all of that, just like, I think it was Natalyn said, you know, about them, it was about them being professionals, but then they just had, you know, because my grandmother wasn't per se professional, but they worked hard and they did what they had to do, you know? So I think the work ethic part of it, Laurel, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but
no, that's good.
That, you know, is kind of like just part of our DNA.
Yes.
So sometimes when I get a compliment maybe about, you know, a project I managed or whatever, and I'm like, oh, thank you. But in my mind, I'm like, but I just did my job. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it wasn't above and beyond. And they're over there, you know, kudos. And I'm like, hey, thank you, I appreciate that. But that's just not being funny. That's how I roll. That's how we roll.
Right? That's how we show up, right?
Yeah,
what about, there was no option.
The best that you can, you know?
Exactly. What about you, Renee?
Well, for me, my daddy always telling me to be on time, places, or be dragging in 5 or 10 minutes late. That was a big thing. And saving money, Lord.
Yes.
That was something. But I finally learned how to save money after I got in college.
Right.
But just like Jan said, with work ethic and stuff, just being on time, whatever you have to do it right. Because I had so many people. I hated the group thing at work. Where it'd be 4 of us, but only 2 of us are really working. The other 2, they'll say, oh, I'll write everything down, but not putting any input in, you know. And just doing your part to help out, you know, and things like that. But also growing up, just being kind to people, you know, like with Regina's daughter's situation. I anytime I can help somebody, I'm ready to help them, you know. And then there's other people out there who will just look at somebody and they're like, I'm not going to get involved.
Right.
But you know who you can get involved with and who you can't.
You absolutely
you just can't help.
Exactly. Daddy used to say, you know, sometimes we can be like crabs in a barrel. One gets out, they're trying to drag everybody else down, right? And you can love people from afar.
Exactly.
You can love them from afar. What about you, Nat?
Well, just piggybacking off of what you just said about what your dad said, that we're like crabs in a barrel. One thing about all of us, and I can say this just from my point of view, but I believe from all 4 of you as well, is that anytime that y'all have something to celebrate, I'm generally, literally excited for you because what good things happen to you is good for me. It's good to me. You know, and that's the way that we've all been brought up, was, you know, to pull each other up and to praise each other for what we've doing. And even like the work ethic, that's very important. You know, people, I get on their nerves at work because I'm like, you know, let's get this done. It's you know, and then we got time for the other stuff, you know, because that's the way that we've been brought up. I've always been that way. Being orderly, being on time. My dad always said cleanliness is next to godliness.
Right.
I'd hear that every Saturday when it was time to clean the house.
Right.
So I still get in my head, okay, well, I've got to get up Saturday morning. I've got to clean the house, I've got to do my chores. And, it's just the daily basics that we were brought up on that I still follow. Because, I don't have to do that, but you still do it because it's just instilled at this point. So
exactly. What about you, Tisa?
There's something about this group that instills confidence in me. And so even as young children growing up, I think it goes back to our parents though, as being an only child, and I like to listen to the conversations, probably wasn't supposed to be in there, it was like, you had to get out of there, don't get
right.
That's right.
But just listening to our parents talk to each other and just the, talking about work or talking wisdom, here and there. I mean, just so many different things. And then the work ethic, absolutely, because a lot of times they were talking about work.
Yes.
And it was important to them to do it well.
Yes.
And as we know, we have to show up better than most. And so I heard that all through my life. So that was instilled in my mind too, that I have to work harder. Might not be right. Might not be right. But I'm going to have to make sure that I show up better than others just because. And Mama would always, tell me too, you're not, you're not better than anybody else. Nobody's better than you.
Right.
Well,
exactly.
Yes. She would tell me things like that. And it was, I understood that more to the kernels of wisdom that all of you all could probably, even to this, like Renee's mother probably don't even know it, but I don't bring work home.
Yep.
For her saying, don't bring your work home.
My mother always said that, don't bring your work home. Yep. My first 2 years of teaching, I did, but after that,
she sure did. Do not bring your work home
because you don't get paid after 3:30.
That's right. Oh, I believe in that strongly.
Yeah. So I know, because I would bring it home and work and work and all that, and I'm like, I might bring my bag home, especially in the age that we're in now. You never know when you might have to work from home.
Yeah,
right. I don't bring work home. I sure don't.
And that's so funny. It's like those little things, right, that somebody would have said. Because I remember Renee's mom saying that. I remember being at Jan's house, and it was like, no, you don't say huh or what here.
Oh no.
That's right.
And I remember thinking, and even to this day, and I don't know if y'all felt the same way. Y'all have to tell me. When we were little, right? It was Vera. It was, Temple. It was El Rey, right? It was felonies. But there was a point in time where it was like, oh, Miss Hawkins, Miss Young, right? Miss Daniels. Right. It's like something flipped at an age where it's like, why are we calling people by their first name? It was, I don't know what happened with that, but there was a level of respect that it wasn't that we were disrespectful when we were little. I think it's because we heard our parents calling each other by their first names.
Right.
But then there was like this switch that flipped that said, no, you got to be respectful. And every time you show up and how you show up is a reflection of those people that brought you here.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And so when I think about all of you and being at your houses and how you always were amazing. And that's why I think we were connected, but all of the things that you guys have done and where you've been and like Natalyn, I live vicariously through you guys. I'm like so excited when I see what's going on, and Renee making this exploding boxes that you see all over. And I'm like, I need one of those for my mom. Right. It's just so much that each of us, that each of us have done and been able to see and support. And so for me, and the reason I wanted to have you guys on the podcast is the very first is I really want women in particular, because it's Women's History Month, right? I want women in particular to understand, don't sleep on those very early relationships. Don't throw those away, right? Those where you were truly grounded and developed your own value system, right? Your own ability to connect and learn, there is a grounding there and a thread there that will always keep you home, right? No matter what's happening. I know that these 4 women right now, I can pick up the phone. At any time, I can pick up the phone. And I know they feel the same way. And so please don't sleep on those, as they say, don't sleep on that, right? Don't sleep on those early relationships, because those are ones that I think give us the biggest heart of who we are. It's where we were forming, right? Forming who we were and what we believed, and listening the most and absorbing the most. So before we leave, I'm gonna give y'all a minute to think about it, because I'll tell one to start. So I'll have a minute, but I want each of you to think about maybe one of the funniest stories or the craziest stories that you've had about our time together, kind of when we were little. And so one of the ones that I will talk about is for those of you who've been listening to me for a long time, y'all know I love words, and I'm all about education, and I'm what they call it, a black nerd. And so if you come to my house, we will play school, which is no big deal. All kids can play school, but not in my house. In my house, when you play school, you actually get real textbooks, again, educators, right? Real textbooks, and do real homework. And I remember Tisa would come over and we would play school, and she's like, really? And I'm like, yes. And this is how you know when you got real deep friends. Because as weird as I was, she would sit there right with me, and she would play school. And then we'd go to her house and play real games. But at my house, she would sit there patiently and let me do my math problems and pretend we were in school. So thank you for continuing to be my friend, even though I made you play school.
I should have listened.
And you know, and the same thing you did, Laura, I did to Tisa too.
See?
I did, except I had stuffed animals out.
Yes.
And I think Tisa might have been the principal.
Oh, well, there you go.
Or some other, she wasn't my student, because
Right.
I would have stuffed animals out. And Tisa would just sit there, and she might have been the principal, I think, and she would come in, or I'd send one of the animals out.
Yeah. See, this is what happens when you
Take
got
the animal, go
educators.
talk to it, and bring it back in. 'Cause I had stuffed animals galore, and I would play school a lot.
Yes. Yes.
Although Tisa and I would play games too. Now we would play
Yeah.
board games, because I had board games galore. All of us played
Yes.
board games, because I'd take them over to Jan's house.
Yes.
Your house.
Truth and
I
Ladders.
love board games.
You had
Game
the
of
best
life, and the
games.
game of life has changed so much. But
Yes.
yeah, but my funniest thing was teaching too, and
Yeah.
poor Tisa got the brunt of it.
Yes. Yeah. Jan, between Tisa and Renee, they had like the best board games.
Yes.
You know, that's where I had to go if I wanted to play a board game. What about you, Jan?
Oh my goodness, I was sitting here trying to think. It's just so many things. I think we had a lot of funny stories at St. Mary's.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say the name.
Please
But the
don't.
one with Tisa.
All three
There
of you
was
went
this
to
girl
St.
in
Mary's,
St.
right?
Mary's. Now she
Yeah.
was kind of like
Laura, Jan, and
snobbish.
Tisa.
Yes.
But Tisa got her good one day. She was getting, I think, on Tisa's nerves, and Tisa photo with a pen with a little stick. Yeah,
I remember that.
Oh goodness.
I don't know why that's so funny to me, but that was just hilarious. And then just the nuns and remember us getting communion, but we weren't really supposed to have communion because we weren't Catholic. So we
Yes.
wanted to know what it tasted like. So we kept all in there getting
Yeah.
us. Yeah, it was a lot of fun times at St. Mary's
Yeah.
School. Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. What about you, Nat?
I'm sitting here trying to think, and I guess I can't think of these specifically, because I just know coming to my house, it would be more like we'd be outdoor, the backyard.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I had that balance beam back there.
Oh,
Mhm.
yes.
So, I was a gymnast, Nadia
Yes.
Comaneci. and that kind of thing. So that's pretty much, I remember just, like I said, being able to play outside and stuff like that. And then we had the grapes and stuff in the backyard. Get to eat the grapes.
Yes.
And, but as far as funny, I'm trying to think, it's just, we always just had such a good time. I just can't think of anything specifically funny, but I just know I was just always so excited and had a great time regardless.
We did. It was so innocent. Yeah. So innocent. What about you, Tisa? Oh, sorry, Nat, go ahead.
No, you're good. Yeah. I was just saying, it was just, regardless, it was just always a good time and innocent, like you said. Always.
What about you, Tisa?
I'm kind of like Nat and Jan. I'm trying to, there's so many things. I mean, we are all, and this is going to sound odd, but we are all rooted in church.
Yes.
Yeah.
We are all rooted in church. And Renee and I went to church together, and we go to mission and all of that. And Jan went, and Jan's parents and family, same on. And I mean, but just I've been to church with, all of you all, just we're rooted in church. But I tell you, it's the funniest thing is to get tickled where you're not supposed to get tickled. Yes. And that's in church. And I remember a time we were in the choir stand, and that gum Renee said something to me. And I mean, I know exactly what it was, but I was like, I thought I was going to pass out because I could not. You just hurt. You just hurt. You just cannot. She just said it with, folks that just get you tickled. Just keep right on going. I can't sit next to you no more.
Yeah, because Renee was good for saying
our
something.
Parents would ask, what was going on up there?
Yes.
And we get in trouble because I saw both of y'all moving.
You'll mess around and get in trouble is what it is.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because Renee was good for saying something in passing.
Oh.
And she would say it and keep going, and then we fall out, right?
Yeah. And be the ones in trouble.
And be the ones in trouble. Exactly. Be the ones in trouble. But no, I mean, I'm sure there's way more than that. Because I mean, I just, like I said, I enjoyed my childhood, and you all played a very huge part in that. And it was a good childhood, a fun childhood. It really was.
It really was. And I think there is so much value in those shared beginnings, right? There's so much value in knowing that there's a place where there's shared experience, right? So even when they talk about, like I had a friend of mine say, every time I'm out with you, you always speak to people. Do you know them? Right? Black people always speak to each other. Do you know them? And I'm like, no, it's just, that's what you do. You acknowledge that someone exists. I mean, you speak, right. That's what you do. And I think it's that, just like there's a shared kind of community experience, I think this idea of shared beginnings where you don't have to explain to people what it meant to grow up in Odessa. You don't have to explain Southside and docks and Blackshear. You don't have to explain that, right?
Docks.
You just have that greasy cheeseburger.
That half of a wiener.
Half a weenie. Half a weenie.
No, I know you're trying to wrap up. I'm gonna tell y'all to this day. I make homemade chili dogs.
You do half a weenie.
Half a weenie. Baby.
Yes,
I split it.
Yes. I do too. Yes. And the first time I did that, my husband was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I just remember growing up."
We got half a weenie.
I was fine with it, but he was like, "Don't cut mine."
James too. I want a whole one. Leave it the whole
one. Yes. No, I mean, and Doc was so funny because he's like, and because my dad, all of our fathers would give him such a hard time. It's like, what? How are you gonna sell a hot dog with half a weenie? He's like, because there's so much meat in the chili. You don't need a
exactly. You couldn't even see the wiener for all that chili.
All that chili.
Yes.
And it was good. It was
so good.
Oh my goodness. It was so good. When the bag, you got good stuff. When by the time you get the bag home, the bag is falling apart from the
greasy bag.
Just absorb the chili. Yeah, right next door
Yes.
at what it was?
Super
They had the
Service.
barbecue chop.
Super
beef.
Service.
Yes, super service.
Yes.
Oh,
Super
Now
service.
I spent
Okay,
many
y'all.
a days at Super Service because my dad would go
Yes.
down there all the time, and I would sit
Yes.
on this little stool, and my dad
Yes.
would say, "Okay, you got your now laters and be quiet."
Right?
The stories they would tell y'all, those
That's
stories.
it.
I would just be sitting there, and they all, yeah, that chick, this, that. They would call the women chicks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That chick, something else. That chick, that, and I would just be eating my candy.
Right? They forget. They
But
would forget
Super
that we were
Service,
there.
I was at Super Service twice a week. I know.
Yes.
Yes.
Great
My
memories
mom and my
there.
daddy around.
That hot link sandwich with the
Yes.
white bread.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
With the
White
white
bread.
bread.
Yep.
That's now that y'all, for those of you
Those
who
are
are
good
listening or
memories.
watching,
Good.
if you know, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Can't describe it. Can't describe it.
They
You
just
can't
can't.
describe it.
There are no words, right? There are no
That's
words.
right.
There.
Right.
When
Right.
Doc left, when Super Service closed down, I just,
Yeah.
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 you
Those
just
are
can't.
Part of the
memories.
community.
It was like the
club.
end of an era.
Yeah, that
the
was
end
the
of an era
community.
right there.
Yes. And like you
Yeah.
said, the
Yeah.
community, because I know, there were times, and I didn't know this until much later. There were a couple times going to Blackshear. So in Odessa, there was a junior high school that was on the south side, and it was right across the street from this burger place we're talking about, and this this kind of store,
Mhm.
Doc's, and then Super Service, a convenience store. Yeah, a convenience store. But you didn't know that there were times that I was standing outside waiting for my parents to come. Something had happened and they were late, and I'm in tears and I'm upset and I can't believe they left me. Those folks across the street knew exactly where I was. They had their eyes on me. My parents weren't worried because somebody was watching. I had no idea. No idea.
Absolutely.
But they
Absolutely.
knew, And so when you grow up like that, and you grow up in this town where your parents know people and they pay attention to who you're with, you didn't have to worry about, yet on the kid's side, it's like, well, you got to be careful, because if so-and-so sees me, they're going to tell my parents and I'm in trouble. But the other side of that was someone was always watching out for you.
Right.
Right.
Always watching out for you. Somebody knew that you were going to be okay. Somebody was making sure you were all right. Someone was making sure nothing was going to happen to you. So don't dismiss those things that are early. Don't dismiss those early experiences that are shared experiences. And for those of you who are a little less experienced than we are, don't be so quick to not pay attention to those conversations from the old folks, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of growth in that. There's a lot of experience in that. And there's a lot of love in those conversations. And it may not look like it at the time, but trust, there will be a time in your life when you will remember that conversation and it'll come back. So ladies, I just thank you. Thank you so much. One, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being a part of my life, for letting me be my little nerdy self and still being my friends. Thank you for being at all the birthday parties and for being on the Rutledge Perspective. This has been absolutely fantastic. And I am just so honored and so blessed to have all of you in my life. We will see you next week. Be sure you tune in. If you're listening to this, definitely go to my website, laurelrutledge.com/podcast, and pull down the video so you can see these amazing women. Take care, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Before you go, I am thrilled to announce the launch of the Rutledge Perspective live conversations on Fireside. This is going to be amazing. It is an opportunity for me to meet you and for you guys to meet me and literally have conversations real time. So live audio and video on Fireside. So these are going to be happening beginning Women's History Month on Thursday, March the 3rd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. So the show is probably going to be on every Thursday, but definitely every Thursday during the month of March, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And for Women's History Month, you're going to get to meet the women who are part of my village that I'm doing the podcast with for Women's History Month. But during the run of the show, I'll be doing some live coaching with people who want to be coached. We'll be talking about those meaty topics that I talk about on the radio show and on the podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. So you get a chance to talk to me, get on the stage, live video, live audio. It's going to be fantastic. And I would love to have you there. So go to my Instagram page, the.rutledge.perspective. the.rutledge.perspective on Instagram, and you can click on the link in my bio and it will be linking you to Fireside so that you can join me there. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning into the podcast, and I really look forward to seeing you on Fireside. Take care. You've been watching The Rutledge Perspective. Thank you for tuning in. If we have given you a different perspective, or if you've learned something new that you hadn't thought about before, please subscribe to the Rutledge Perspective podcast where you get your favorite podcasts, and give us a like on iTunes or Google Play or Stitcher. We really appreciate it. And your feedback is important as well, as we use that to inform our next episodes. You can also head over to my website, laurelrutledge.com, and download a freebie called Where's My Mojo that can really help you get out of your rut or maybe talk you back off that ledge of frustration. You can also find previous episodes of The Rutledge Perspective on laurelrutledge.com. I really appreciate your tuning in. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.